Hi, everybody. Welcome to Crochet Sweater Club. This is, I believe, our fourth session. Um, Today, we're going to be talking about joining the body in the round. We're going to be working in the round in a little bit different way. And we're going to work through the body stitches and get to the hem split and work that. So there's actually quite a bit to cover in this time. I'm going to cover, here's the points I want to cover today. How to join your sweater in the round because we've been working on the front and the back. How to then work the rounds because you're not just going around in a circle. We need to maintain our right and our wrong side. So I'll show you that. I'm going to talk to you about how long to make the body and how to adjust that. We're also going to talk when we're joining about the sizing underneath the arms. We'll get to that too. We're going to talk about how to do a split hem for this pattern. And we're actually going to also talk about how to do the rounded corners that make this make the sweater really unique at the split hem. So a lot to cover. Um, so up till now, we've been working the front and the back separately. And I have like almost a page and a half of notes here. So several things that I thought maybe were important. Class this morning, a lot of good questions. We had one crocheter who is she's not a beginner knitter, but she's newer to crocheting. And I believe this is one of her first garments. So she had a whole different set of questions. And then we had another very advanced crocheter who had a whole different set of questions. So it was a really good session this morning. And then I kind of rewrote my notes because it brought up a really interesting topic that I think we come to is that we can all read the same pattern and read it a little bit differently based on our experience. So hopefully I will help you work through wherever you're at and answer any questions. Some of this may seem really, really easy for you. And for some of you, if you've not read a lot of crochet patterns, some of this might be new. So hopefully it will be helpful regardless. All right, so up till now, you should have finished if your size had armhole shaping, the armhole shaping at the front, okay? And we're ready to start the body section. So that's where we're going to be starting from. Going forward, there are a lot of different sections in the pattern based on your size. So there'll be whole paragraphs written for only one size or one or two sizes. So my suggestion is to either mark out the sizes you don't need or highlight your particular size because on this whole page, not every paragraph applies to you. So, and your size. So make sure you're focusing on what you need to focus on there. Okay. Some things are for all sizes, but there's more and more of that for the different sizes. So look for that. Um, let's see. When you're working, before you start the body stitches, and this one I have started the body stitches. I've actually started the hem split on this as well. But make sure that your front and your back, that you have finished with a wrong side row and the same wrong side row. So if you'll remember, our wrong side rows are either a double crochet row or a double crochet cluster row. Right side rows are always single crochet. So when you finish, get to the point where you're ready to join, we want to make sure that you have finished with either a double crochet row here and a double crochet row in the back, or a cluster row and a cluster row in the front. Because when we join it, we want to be going on to the same row. So that came up this morning. So double check that. Finishing on a wrong side row and the same wrong side row. Okay. Let's see. Now I'm going to slip mine on, and I think we talked about this last month. About I love the way this sweater fits already, and it's not even done. Remember, it's a drop sleeve, so it should be boxy. Okay. Let me stand up a little bit here too. It should be boxy, and it should the shoulder should come down off the shoulder. It's a drop shoulder or a drop sleeve. Okay. We're going to be joining underneath here in the underarm, and depending on your size, you might be chaining additional stitches. You might be chaining no stitches, and you might be getting rid of stitches. Okay, again, it's really important that you know your size. So once I show you how to join and you do a couple of rows, I suggest you slip it back on and get someone else to help you to make sure that it's sitting correctly in the back and in the front. Remember, we're going to have a decent amount of ribbing here, and that this width underneath the arm is where you want it to be. If it's too tight, it's always going to be too tight. Now remember, we're going to block, so there's some room there. If it's way too big and you hang your um, arms down and it's super baggy like this, then we got to do some adjusting. Okay. So don't go too far before you've joined in the round, done a couple of rows, and you slip it back on and make sure that you are happy with the way it fits. I plan on wearing mine over something, tank top or something, because I think once it opens up, it will have a little see-through to it. So I'm wearing a lightweight shirt now. Try it on with that and get an idea. It's so comfortable. I'm so excited about this. I think this is going to be, oh, look at all my dog hair. Um, everything I own is covered in dog hair. I think it's going to be really lovely. Okay. So I'm thrilled with the way mine fits. I did check it a couple of times. If you've got questions, if you get to that part and you're not local and you want some help, email us, put Crochet Sweater Club in the subject line so that I make sure I catch it, and we can get together on Zoom privately, and I'm happy to walk you through some steps on how to either decrease or increase to make it fit well for you. We're spending a lot of time on this. It should fit you very, very well. Okay. So I'm going to take this off so I don't start to get hot in here. Okay. So I had been working on two different ones. I am so far behind on the other one. And working all the way around a sweater on camera would take forever. So I have done up a little swatch in our pattern. I think I showed this last time. This is where we joined the shoulders across the front. That's where the orange stitch is. And then I've worked the front down in my pattern. And my front ends with double crochet. Hopefully you can see that, and my back ends with double crochet. So I'm going to be demonstrating these next pieces or these next steps on my little sample that doesn't have even shoulders. It's just a little lopsided, but you'll get the idea. And it's much quicker for me to work around, but I can show you how to join and do these different techniques on a smaller scale. Okay. So I'm going to be doing that. All right. So I'm going to switch to the camera. I'm going to be looking at the pattern here as well. And let's optimize and share. Okay. So I've got my markers here showing that I'm on the right side here. You need to have finished with wrong side rows, which you did for both the back and the front. And the directions do tell you that. You need to be ready to work right side rows, which is a single crochet on both the front and the back. Okay. Now, this is important for your sizing. For sizes 1 and 2, you will not be adding, as we fold this over to make the armhole, you will not be adding any chains right here to increase the size of the armhole a little bit. As a matter of fact, you're actually going to be skipping over a couple of stitches so that it's not too big. Okay. Let's see. sizes 3 through 9, you will be chaining anywhere from 0 stitches up to 10 stitches under the arm. So make sure you've got your size highlighted so that you know. And that's what I mean. Everybody's body is a little different. So around, now this does not have to do with the armhole. It has more to do with the body and less to do with the sleeve. Okay. We don't want it to be too big on the body. We can make some adjustments when we come to the sleeve to increase the sleeve size if you've got a little bit more in the upper arm you need to make way for, or if you've got really skinny arms, we can take it in a little bit. Okay. We're more focused on the body and less on the actual sleeve. It just needs to fit nicely around your arm and underneath into your armpit and not pull tightly across the chest or be too loose and baggy. Okay. We'll deal with the sleeve and sleeve shaping in, I think, a month, 2 months. I can't remember. Okay. So here, let's talk about how to join. So once you find your size, I happen to be doing a size 6. So I will be adding stitches. I'm ready to work a right side row. I can see my right side row markers. Okay. And for my size 6, it says turn to work on the right side along the front. This is my front because this is where my neckline, where I added stitches to join across the neckline. I'm going to chain 1. Did I chain 1 already? I did not. I'm going to chain 1 and I am going to single crochet to the end of the front. I will do that now. There won't be any change in how using the turning chains as stitches, none of that changes. A single crochet across. I will tell you, when working on this body part, it's a lot of going around. I would say hopefully you have gotten used to your 4-row pattern at this point, and I don't think I really even picked up my pattern until I needed to look to see how long I was supposed to go, because that 4-row pattern I find really easy to visually see where I'm at. And you're not doing any increases or decreases unless we need to make any adjustments. You're just going to be working straight. The style is supposed to be boxy. All right, so I'm working all the way across my front. And for my size, I am supposed to chain 6. If you were a size 3, you would do no chains. But I think the 6 is actually pretty helpful here. 1, 2, and don't make these super tight because you know you're going to have to make stitches into them. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now I'm going to join to the back, staying on the right side. I'm going to slip stitch. I think I'm supposed to slip stitch. Hold on. Chain 6 for the underarm. Nope, single crochet, just single crochet. So go to my first stitch here and single crochet across to the end of the back. There's a slip stitch coming up. And when I get to the other underarm, I will repeat my chains. So for the smaller sizes, I as I work across here, I'm going to tell you what I recommend that you do. She talks about skipping some stitches and leaving some stitches unworked. We talked about this morning because both two of the people in class this morning were in the 1 and 2 sizes. Where she says to skip a stitch, just slip stitch into that stitch to work across it. Not super tight because you will need to work, maybe need to work into it when it comes to the sleeve. But it isn't a stitch that you need for your body count. This will be clear as we get there. So on the small sizes, it actually pulls it in just a little bit so that it's not too big of an armhole opening. So where she says skip stitches, just slip into whichever number of stitches she says to. All right, so I've worked across the back in my right side row, which is always a single crochet. And I'm going to slip stitch into the first stitch that I started with over here first I have to do my chain 6. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I will slip stitch into the top of my first stitch. I'm going to pull up a loop so I can put it down. And now I am joined in the round. Okay, here's my front. Here's my front. And I have an armhole opening, my back, and an armhole opening. And I finished with a double crochet row, and then I just did a single underneath it on the front, and a double crochet row, and a single on the back. So now all of them that I'll be working on one row all together, or excuse me, one round all together, I will continue in my pattern. So my next stitch will be a cluster row. And you're going to continue in your pattern. So we're going to move on to all sizes. Let me put my hook back in. This is going to be now your beginning of your round. So I just finished slip stitching, still facing the right way. I'm going to turn. Well, how do you turn? I'm going to turn so that now I want to be looking at the wrong side. I want to be looking to the inside of the sweater. And when I have to do that, I don't love for my yarn here to cross over. Let me zoom in a little bit here. I don't like it to cross over the chain. So I take it underneath my hook. And it's really just this first time. You're going to find your rhythm with this. Okay. So now I'm ready to work a wrong side row because those cluster stitches are made on wrong side rows so that they pop out to the right side. If we were to stay on the right side and make them, it would be very obvious that our stitches look different. So we have to turn and work into the wrong side. So now she says, from now on, you will work in circular rounds in pattern as established until the hem is split. Make sure to use the invisible join technique when joining the round, which she says is explained in the special techniques. I'm going to show you that. And turn at the end of every round to keep the right side, wrong side pattern effect. So in your pattern here, in the beginning, and I numbered all my pages, you have a special techniques. And right here, she talks about how to work in the round with an invisible join. All right. You're going to join in the round by making a slip stitch in the first stitch of the round, which we've just done. And to keep it as invisible as possible, we're going to pull and tighten both the slip stitch and the following turning chain. They never count as stitches. Okay, so let me show you. And I'm going to show you on my finish, the one that I've already joined, that you can see that it really is quite an invisible join. So I've done that slip stitch. I'm going to pull it a little snug and I'm ready to chain 2. And since I don't need to make stitches into that turning chain, I don't care how tight those chains are. They don't need to be particularly loose. because I'm not going to make stitches into them. And now I'm going to be making cluster stitches into my chain. You can choose to work into the back bump, which is kind of facing you, or you can choose to work into the top loop. It is up to you. Just be consistent. Although, again, it's going to be under your arm. So, you know, not many people are going to see it. Right. And you continue on as possible as normal. Skip a chain. All right, so I'm into that one. I'm going to skip that one. At the end, let me go back to our page. I'm going to try to keep talking as I do this. I'm looking at the body section again. Right before it says all sizes, she, at the end of your size about how you do the chains, she does give you a total stitch count. Okay. So that is how many stitches you should then have all the way around. I would do this row. I think it's easiest to count on this cluster row because you can count the cluster. And you know there's a chain one after it, which is the second stitch. So it's easier to count. And make sure that you have the right stitch count. If you don't have the right stitch count, if you are close within, I would say 1, 2, even 3 stitches, don't sweat it because you have the whole body to make that stitch count right. If you are really off, here we go. Okay, now it'll go a little smoother. If you are really off, oh, batch run out of yarn. Sorry. Stop and figure out why. Did you miss increases in either the front or the back? Let's see, where was I in this? I really hate to stop in the middle of a stitch. I'm going to take that back and start my new stitch. Okay. Whoop, I'll tighten all that up. 2, 3, and then let's pull through all of them. Great. Okay. The easiest place to do your adjusting will be under the arms because A, it won't be seen. It won't show in the front or the back that your stitches are off if you have to increase or decrease. If you have trouble with that, again, reach out and we'll work through it together. Happy to. In fact, I did not count at this point. I counted at the end before my hem split and I was 2 stitches off. So I'm going to recommend that you count again before the hem split and make sure that you are correct. Because when we do the hem split, um, we want those side splits to be on opposite sides, and you're going to be working across a certain number of stitches. And if your stitch count is wrong, you might end up with a hem split, a little bit askew towards the front or the back. So at that point, it becomes very important to make sure that your stitch count is correct. Okay, let me work around here. Let's see what else I have in my notes about this body. And how to work in rounds. Okay. So again, I'm working on the wrong side. And I am going to pause the recording as I work around. And I'll show you how we join and turn. So I will be right back. Okay, got all the way around there. Let's share. Okay, so I have worked around on my wrong side, and I'm coming back to where I made my first one here. And this little swatchy thing, I had no stitch count planning here. So I ended up with an extra stitch here, which I don't care about it because it's my swatch. So I am going to make my last cluster here and just go with it. And then I'm going to slip stitch into the top of the first stitch. So here's my chain two, and here's the top of my first stitch to close the round. So pull it through. And again, I'm going to pull that pretty snug because no stitch is going to go into there. And then my next round is going to be, and I like to chain before I turn. So you can either turn it now or chain first, but I like to chain first. I'm going to chain one, and then I'm going to turn it over so that I'm looking at the right side of the sweater. And I like to do it that way because then my yarn is in the back if I've already chained. And now I'm going to do a single crochet, and I'm going to pull that chain a little on the snug side. And I'm going to do my single crochet in every space and stitch all the way around. Okay. Now I've just done two. I recommend, even if you are fairly confident, put a stitch marker where your first stitch is so that as you work around your right side, because I do it on every row, particularly on the single crochet row, there's not much of an indent for that stitch. There's a tendency as you get further away from the armholes, especially, to just keep going. So this is my beginning of round. I'm going to single crochet all the way around. I'm going to slip stitch here. I'm going to chain two. I'm going to turn it to face the wrong side and do a double crochet. Mark the first double crochet. And so you're going to be working back and forth like this. So you still have a right side and a wrong side. You're not only working on one side of the fabric, you are still working on both sides of the fabric, but it is joined in the round. Okay. I'm going to show you on my sweater how that invisible join looks. Let's see. Here we go. I'm going to show you so this is the right side. Ooh, that looks so dark. Let's brighten that up a little. Okay. Too bright, too dark. That's pretty good. Okay, so this is the underarm where the beginning of round is. And I'm going to just kind of open it up. It's right here. You really cannot see it at all. The rows line up very nicely because the slip stitch and the turning chain were very snug. Everything lines up, I think, great. I'm going to compare it to the other underarm where I was just working, not the beginning of round, and they look exactly the same. Okay, so that invisible join really does work and makes for a nice seamless look. Now that's way too bright. There we go. Okay, so that is how we work these in the rounds. Okay, that was we've talked about how to join it and now how to work the rounds. You're going to go back and forth that way. How long to make the body? The pattern says to continue working in pattern for the body, alternating between your 4 rows, turning inside for right, be, alternate between right side and wrong side, turning. And they give you a length in both centimeters and inches. I had not intended on making a cropped version, but I've changed my mind, and here's why. I'm going to do a little adjusting. What we're going to be coming to is a split in the hem. Um, you can make this as long as you want, but what you don't want to have happen if you have hips, if you have wider hips, this is where it can become an issue. What you don't want is that split hem, and I do have wider hips, so I'm going to demonstrate. You don't want that split hem to happen below the hips or right at the hips because then it's going to flare out and open. I want that split hem to happen before it hits my wider hips. Okay. So I'm going to work down and I want the split hem to start right about here for me. If you don't have wider hips, you can make this as long as you want, but I recommend that you make the split hem just above your hips, knowing that once we start rounding the corners, you're going to be adding an additional about 3 to 4 inches, between 3 and 4 inches for the front, and 4, maybe a little over inches in the back. So there's more length to come because that includes the ribbing. Okay. So you can make this as long as you want. I recommend doing in pattern straight until it hits just above your hips. Okay. And then start the split hem. You can add more length after you split the hem before you add those rounded corners to make that split a little longer. Okay. Totally fine. Not a problem at all. Um, but think about that as you're working down how far you want to go. So I'm working this particular one. I stopped at, for my size, it was recommended for 4 inches from, because I actually have I have a short torso. So my hips are actually pretty high up for the rest of my body. So I don't want that split. I want that split to happen when it should happen. So it's not flaring out. So I did the 4 inches from the underarm. I did the 4 inches to here. Okay. And then um, I'm going to be adding a little more length after I split, because then we'll be working the front stitches again separately and the back stitches again separately. I'm going to add a little bit more in the front and a little bit more in the back. And the great thing is we can keep trying it on, knowing that we're going to be adding 3.5-ish inches for the front with the rounded corners and about 4-ish inches in the back with the rounded corners plus the ribbing to complete it. Okay. So just keep those things in mind as you're working along. Let's see. Let's talk about how to split the hem. You're going to finish with a wrong side row. So I'm actually going to pause this again. I'm going to do my next wrong side row so that I can demonstrate how to do the split. Okay, I've worked around and I have completed a wrong side row. And this is the point that we talked about before. You want to check your stitch count. You want to make sure that you've got the right number of stitches that were listed underneath the body section, right here for sizes 1 and 2, and the rest of the sizes right here. Find your stitch count and circle it and make sure you've got the right stitch count at this point, okay? So let me slip over here. Share. Okay. So I am finishing a wrong side row with double crochet. I am going to take out my marker, slip stitch to join, and let's see, chain one and turn. Okay, so now I've got the right side facing, and we're going to talk about the split hem. Again, this is going to be different depending on your size. So make sure you finish with the wrong side row and you've checked your stitch count. There is a setup row for the split hem, okay? We are only going to be doing the front hem first because we are, in fact, ready to work a right side row across our front, okay? The back will work exactly the same way, okay? But we're going to do just the front. So we're really we've joined it in the round and now we're separating it again, okay? Working front and back separately. For sizes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're going to cut your yarn. And with the right side facing, you are going to move where your beginning is. To make this a little bit more clear before we do it, in your pattern, and I have my pages numbered, under the hem section on page 16. So you have a hem section right here. I'm going to switch on and show that. I'm not going to show all of the pattern because that's not nice, but I want to show the picture. This is what we're going to be making here, okay? We are going to be working across, actually it's going to be this is the front and this is the back, but we're going to be working across, but not all the way to the side. So just for sake of ease and numbers, let's say you've got 300 stitches, 150 would be halfway across. But we're not going to work 150 stitches. We're going to stop 4 stitches shy from that 150 because we want to leave an 8-stitch gap that will then be covered later by the ribbing, by overlapping ribbing. And let me show you what that looks like. Right here on one of the last pages. So here is that 8-stitch gap. And then when we pick up and add the ribbing, it will overlap. 4 stitches here. I'm sorry, there's 8 stitches, but part of it goes this way and part of it goes underneath. Okay, so that gap will get filled later, but right now we're going to be leaving a gap and just be working the front, and then we'll just be working the back with this big 8-stitch gap on either side. Okay, so hopefully that's clear about where we're headed. This is the part where you've got to trust the pattern in what we're doing. So for my particular size, which was size 6, all I had to do was turn to the right side, slip stitch into the first stitch. I take that back. Yeah, slip stitch into the first stitch of the round. That slip stitch no longer counts as part of this body row, and the next stitch will be my first stitch. So I will slip stitch into that one, and now that's going to become part of my 8 stitches. Okay, my first stitch will begin here, and I will be doing a single crochet across. So I'm just going to do a single. Okay, but now my first, I'm going to go ahead and mark it because a slip stitch and a single can look very similar. So now this is my first stitch of this row. Okay, so when I turn around and come back, that's where I'll be stopping. Okay, now if you are doing sizes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you're going to cut your yarn and you are going to count, for most of the sizes, 5 stitches to the left. So I'm going to count One, two, three, four, five, and you're going to reattach your yarn here. And these stitches are going to be part of your split your 8 stitches. And you're going to start your front piece here. Let me zoom out. Okay, so we won't be covering half of the measurement. We're going to be covering half less 8. A total of 16 stitches are going to be eliminated, 8 on each side, and we're only going to be working in between there. Okay, once you get started, you'll be able to see. All right, so if you're size 7, you actually have to move back this way. So it tells you to take your hook out and come back a stitch and move your beginning of your round back a little bit. Okay, so pay attention to your size. I'm going to go ahead and continue on for size 6, which was to slip stitch here and then single crochet. And they give you a total number of stitches to single crochet across. You got to turn the page for all sizes. So I'm going to single crochet in my particular size 149 stitches. Now, this is why it's important that you have the correct stitch count. Because if I do 100, if I'm off by 10 stitches and I go 149 across, my split won't be at the sides. It might be a little bit askew. Okay. So make sure you're starting with the right stitch count and then work across. If you don't want to count every stitch, count ahead of time and put a stitch marker for where you're stopping. Okay. And then just work your singles across. I'm going to, oh, I'm going to leave that. Sorry, I'm going to leave that there. That was my slip stitch. That's my first one. Don't know exactly how many stitches I have here, but I'm going to leave. I'm going to guess 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. I may have to fudge this later, but I think that's where I'm going to stop. So I'm only going to be working across the front, not going all the way to the sides. Okay. So let me single crochet across. There was a lot to cover this month. I will tell you though, those body stitches for those inches that you're crocheting, they do take up a lot of time. This part is there's a lot of moving parts and changing things, but it's actually not that many rows. It's the body stitches that are going to take you the longest amount of time between now and next month. I just wanted you to have the techniques to work up to the next step. So don't wait until, if you're trying to stay within our timeline, don't wait until the last week before class to start on those body stitches, because it's a lot going all the way around. You're not divided in half anymore. You've got the full number of stitches. Okay, so I've reached here, and according to the pattern, I'm going to pretend I've worked my 149 stitches. Depending on what your row was, you're going to work it the same way. I was working into double crochets. If your last wrong side row were clusters, you work it the same way into the top of the stitch and the chain space, which is what she describes. She says row 1, chain 1 and single crochet 95, 105, however many stitches, working in each stitch and chain space. That does not mean that you should have finished with a row 4. It just means that if you had finished with a row 4, you work it as usual. If you had done doubles, then you work it into the top of every stitch. All right. And we're going to leave the rest of the stitches unworked. Row 2 will be a wrong side row, and we're going to work in pattern. So I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to turn it over, and now I'm working back and forth just like I did previously. And she describes You're going to start if you happen to be doing a double, you're going to chain two and double crochet back. If you're doing a cluster, you're going to chain two and do a two double crochet cluster in the first stitch. Chain one, skip one, and then go back to your regular three double crochet cluster across. Okay. Now, you can continue working back and forth like this as long as you want. Just remember that the rounding of the corners and adding the ribbing for this front part will add approximately 3.5 inches. Now, if your row gauge is different than the row gauge from the pattern, this would be a good time to know what your row gauge is. And the rounding of the corners takes 8 rows. So you can, measure over an 8-row period and know that you've got that much more that's going to be added, plus ribbing. Okay. So you can keep going this way as long as you want. You've done your hem split. The back hem will be worked the same way. You're going to be cutting off your yarn and reattaching for the back hem. You're going to be leaving 8 stitches unworked here, and you'll be working starting on a right side row with another setup row across. Tells you how many to work across, so you'll end up with 8 stitches here that are unworked and 8 stitches here that are unworked. Okay. So, because I'm not gonna get to demonstrating that whole thing, but it works the exact same way. So does the rounding of the corners. Okay. I don't think I have to, I'm gonna get to the end of this row. It's a little easier to show it. Okay, so like I said, you need to finish with a wrong side row. However many rows you continue, make sure you finish with a wrong side row. And I would write that down. Oh, it doesn't really matter. You can, because your back, you may go a little further. Your front and your back don't have to match. And I intend on making my back a little longer. And I do believe that the rounded corners for the back might be a different number of rows. Let me just check that. It's 10 rows. So the rounded corners of the back do take it down a little bit in the back. So you don't have to have finished with the same wrong side row like we did when we joined it in the round. Okay. So I finished with the wrong side row. So now I am ready to start row 1, which I know is going to be a right side and I know it's going to be a single. Okay. So I'm going to chain 1. And she tells you here to place a marker on the first and the last stitch of the row to mark the start of the rounded corners. Do not forget this part. This is important. So I'm going to slide a stitch marker right at this, the first and the last stitch of that row that I just finished, okay? So I want to know where the rounded corners start. Now, I've chained 1 and I've turned. I'm going to single crochet 2 together, and then I'm going to single all the way across until I've got 2 stitches left or chain space, and I'm going to single crochet 2 together. I'm going to get rid of 1 stitch here and 1 stitch here. Okay. So because I'm going to go into the top of this one, into the chain space and pull them together. So that's my first stitch of this row. And now I single crochet across. I think I forgot to leave a chain space there, so let's add it. Go. I hope you guys figured that out. That if you forget to make a chain space between your clusters, just put another single there and it opens it up and looks like you actually made the chain space. And then your stitches will stay the right count. I think I did that a couple of times. All right. Almost there. Again, we're continuing to work on our row pattern. So right side rows are always going to be singles, wrong side rows are always going to be doubles and double crochet cluster rows. But we're going to be decreasing on every row. On rows 1 through 6, we're getting rid of one stitch. So I'm going to go, I've got 1, 2, and 3 stitches left. So let's do here. And we'll do the chain space and our last all together. Okay. So I got rid of one stitch at each end. My wrong side row, I'm going to chain 2 and turn, and I'm going to double crochet 2 together. 1, 2, and pull through. I don't need to mark anything. And then I'm going to double crochet all the way across until I get to the last 2 stitches, and I will double crochet 2 together. All right, so what's going to happen here, you can already see it, I'm going to end up with this rounding effect. So I'm going to do that for rows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Row 6 is going to be a, let's see, row 6 is going to be an odd numbered row. So it's going to be a single. No, I take that back. It's going to be row 1 was a single. Yes. So row 6 will be a wrong side row. Row 7, when you get to row 7, instead of single crocheting 2 together like we did, you're going to single crochet 3 together. We're going to get rid of 2 stitches here at this end. And when you get to the end, you're going to work down to the last 3 stitches and you're going to single crochet 3 together here. So we got rid of 2 and 2 on row 7. Row 8, you're going to either do a double row or a cluster row, and she describes how to get rid of the 3 stitches depending on what you're doing. Either you're double crocheting 3 together at each end, or you are double crocheting 2 together, skipping a stitch without a chain, and then starting your 3 your 3 double crochet cluster row till the end. So she writes out those 8 rows very clearly. So what you'll end up with is rounded corners, okay, with a gap. Then you'll go back and do the same thing with the back, and you'll have rounded corners with the back. And that's what you need to get to for next time. I'm going to look at my notes because I want to make, there's a lot to cover. See the back hem, there's a setup row, and that was it, and how to round the corners. So don't forget to put your stitch markers here. Anytime she tells you to put the stitch markers, make sure you do, because you do need to know where your rounded corners began. That will be important for when we're doing the ribbing, okay? I think that's all we had for this week, which was a lot. If you've got questions, please, please, please reach out. I'm always happy to answer. I've really enjoyed working on this project. It's I think one of the best fitting crocheted sweaters I've ever made so far. I'm really excited to finish it up with you guys. And then next time we will pick it up with sleeves. We're going to save the ribbing for last. So we're going to start with the sleeves next time, and then we will finish up the last month with the ribbing. All right, you guys take care and reach out if you've got questions. Bye.